What is happening, everyone? Happy Saturday, happy extended weekend. I hope everyone has an awesome Labor Day weekend. Today, we are diving right into the best division in the NFL, or arguably the best division in the NFL, because even myself, I am not sure if this is going to remain the best division in the NFL or if the NFC West will take over that mantle. But the NFC North is a really strong division. To be honest, it's the hardest division for me to pinpoint. It can swing in so many different ways. All the teams I think are pretty good teams at the very least, so it makes it really difficult. But I'm going to do my best to elaborate why I think it'll play out the way it'll play out. Now, I will admit I am a Minnesota Vikings fan, but I will also admit that a lot of times I try to counter my probably internal bias. And sometimes I actually overdo that and kind of don't give my own teams the credit that they deserve. So keep that in mind. We'll look back last year. Obviously, the Detroit Lions won this division with a record of 15-2. Incredible season by Detroit. And honestly, a team that was really banged up towards the end of the year. That defense, I think, they had like injuries to half their starters at the very least. So they hung in there. That's why Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator from last year, got a head coaching job this year because he did a hell of a job with how banged up that Detroit team was. Second place was my Minnesota Vikings. They were 14-3, and they absolutely crapped the bed in the last two games. They played at Detroit and got destroyed and smacked around in pretty embarrassing fashion. Then they went into the playoffs in LA against the Rams and crapped the bed again and got destroyed and embarrassed again. So, but they did have an overall great regular season at 14-3. Third place was the Green Bay Packers, who are 11-6, and I think the best coached team in this division. I do think the Vikings have a great coach in Kevin O'Connell, but what Matt LaFleur has done, especially after recently, obviously with the Micah Parsons trade, looking at this roster in Green Bay, the fact that they went 11-6 last season with dealing with, if you all don't remember, that Jordan Love got hurt in that first game of the season. And for Matt LaFleur to coach this team the way he has, their defense and their defensive coordinator, who's an up-and-coming stud, it looks like, had this defense playing, I think they were the 6th-ranked defense last year, without really big-time stud players. Jair Alexander was there last year, but he was injured most of the time. And they really did a great job. So do I have hatred for the Green Bay Packers? Oh, of course I do. Do I have respect for them? Absolutely. Like I said, I try to play it as even as I can, and I think the Packers are the best coached team in the NFC North. Matt LaFleur is incredible. Last place last year were the Chicago Bears at 5-12. Again, we've talked about this. They just should have fired Matt Eberflus before the year started and had a head coach walk with Caleb from the very beginning. But a lost season for Chicago last year, 5-12, and really once they lost that game on that Hail Mary to Washington, it seemed like that season just got derailed and it was never the same. Now, offseason moves. All right, we will zoom through these pretty quick. Detroit, coaching changes everywhere. Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, gone. In comes John Morton. He used to be the quarterback's coach, you could say, in Denver, the passing game coordinator is what his title was. He comes in from Denver. He's the new offensive coordinator in Detroit. Aaron Glenn, as we mentioned, the defensive coordinator out in Detroit because he got a head coaching job with the Jets. So now Kelvin Shepard has been promoted. So he was on that staff under Aaron Glenn. Now he's their defensive coordinator. Frank Ragnow, biggest loss I think they had this offseason aside from the coordinators. Their center retired, so that's a hole they have to fill. They re-signed Marcus Davenport. I don't think that's a big deal because the guy is a stud when he plays, but frankly, he was on the Vikings before the Lions, and he's always hurt, so he's never been playing. Derek Barnes, they re-signed to a 3-year, $25.5 million deal. DJ Reed was their biggest signing, 3-year, $48 million for the cornerback, which is good because they do need secondary help. And Terrion Arnold, their high draft pick from a couple years out, he's all right, but he ain't that good. So bringing in DJ Reed, I wanted the Vikings to sign DJ Reed, so jealous of that, and he has signed with Detroit. So that was their offseason. Minnesota's offseason, they beefed up the offensive line. Ryan Kelly and Will Fries come over from Indianapolis. Donovan Jackson, they drafted as their guard. So their whole interior line is revamped. It should be way better. They traded for Jordan Mason, the stud running back that, played great when he came in for Christian McCaffrey last year at San Francisco, but then he got hurt. But they traded for him. Now he is going to split the backfield with re-signed Aaron Jones. Their biggest losses, obviously, Sam Darnold, that's the big question with Minnesota, because in comes finally J.J. McCarthy in that era. They also lost Cam Bynum, the safety, but defensively, they signed Jonathan Allen, a defensive tackle, and Javon Hargrave, another defensive tackle. So they decided we're going to stop the run and we're going to try to be good on the run this offseason. So the trenches have been filled for the Vikings, which I love that they did that. The defense should be better, if not the same, just based off of that. Another year under Brian Flores. And the offense, well, that's the question. It's J.J. McCarthy. All right, then Green Bay. So they obviously made their big splash this week. Micah Parsons, that's the biggest news coming out of it, Green Bay. They drafted Matthew Golden, and as I said, if Matthew Golden hits, the Green Bay Packers are contenders. But we don't know that. He's a rookie receiver. We'll see how it goes. They signed guard Aaron Banks to a 4-year, $77 million deal. And they signed Nate Hobbs to a 4-year, $48 million deal. He's a corner because they lost 2 corners. Eric Stokes and the before-mentioned Jair Alexander is now a Baltimore Raven. They couldn't agree on a contract, so he's gone. And keep in mind that part of this Micah Parsons trade, they also lost Kenny Clark. Now, their defense, I think, will still be great and possibly better now, definitely, because they have Micah Parsons. Another year under this defensive coordinator of theirs, so we'll see how that goes. Now, Chicago, well, the biggest news, obviously, everyone knows it, Ben Johnson. So they snagged the offensive coordinator from Detroit, who ran an incredible offense over there. They bring him in. He's their new head coach. He's there to essentially help Caleb Williams and get him on track. But they also beefed up the line, which I love that they did. They signed center Drew Dahlman over from the Falcons. Joe Thuney they traded for him from the Chiefs. They also signed another guard from the Rams, or traded for him. Grady Jarrett, defensive tackle from the Atlanta Falcons. They drafted Colston Loveland and Luther Burden. They did lose Keenan Allen. So that is a recap of how this went in the offseason for these 4 teams. Now, what do we predict? The one thing that I'm sure of in my prediction is that Detroit, Green Bay, and Minnesota are still going to be pretty damn good. Chicago, I think, will be better. But I don't think that they're going to make this incredible jump from 5 wins, 5-12 last year, to 12 wins this year. I just don't see that happening. It's a tough schedule, which these teams have a tough schedule. Minnesota has a really tough schedule too. But I think Detroit is being overlooked. And I think Detroit is motivated, first of all. And coming off of 15-2 season, sure, you can attribute a couple of those wins to the offensive and defensive coordinators, for sure. But you still have your head coach. Dan Campbell, do I think he's rah-rah and a little bit crazy and wacko? For sure. But the guy, since he got there, he changed the culture. It wasn't Ben Johnson. It wasn't Aaron Glenn. Dan Campbell's the one that changed that culture. And I think Dan Campbell is going to use this as fire, the fact that people have completely overlooked a 15-win team in Detroit. They still got the same players. When I looked at this Packer roster, I look at it up and down, and I would rather have the Detroit roster. I think Jared Goff is the best quarterback in the NFC North. If you just look at the numbers, and maybe now without Ben Johnson, he struggles a little bit. But I think we have to see it. I mean, we have to see him really struggle like that. Yes, he struggled in LA, but he also went to a Super Bowl with LA. So we'll see how this works out. But I think the Lions, those players aren't going to forget how to play football. They still have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They still have Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta. So as far as playmakers, Detroit and Minnesota have the best playmakers in the division. I don't think that's a question. Heck, I even think the wide receivers in Chicago I would rather have than the wide receivers in Green Bay. Again, Matthew Golden is a big question, but ultimately, what you got, with DJ Moore. Rome Odunze had a rookie year. He's all right. Luther Burden, we don't know anything about him, just like we don't know anything about Matthew Golden. So playmaker-wise, Detroit and Minnesota got the best playmakers. So I think Detroit is still going to be, a good football team. I think they drop off from 15-2, but I don't see them dropping off to 8 or 9 wins. I think they can still get 12 or 13 wins. Green Bay, like I said, I think they are well coached. And that's the thing with them. I think now this year, I'm not high on Jordan Love, but he was injured last year and banged up, and they still managed an 11-6 record. So let's say he's healthy this year. That should help them. Their defense, Micah Parsons, I think is going to be better. Their wide receivers can't get worse. They sucked last year. Now they got Matthew Golden. Maybe he's at least a weapon that they can use here and there. So I think they're actually going to improve. I think from 11-6, I have Green Bay somewhere around 12 wins. I think they can go 12-5. I'll leave Minnesota last because I think they're the wild card here. Chicago, I think they're going to be 8-9 or 7-10. They're in a tough division, tough schedule. Caleb, I think will and is capable of being better with some coaching, but I think if they don't get off to a hot start, the pressure will be on and things can unravel from there, just like they unraveled for them last year. So we'll see. And Minnesota, there's the thing. This is the top team in the NFL that, obviously, aside from a Patrick Mahomes injury, I'm not talking even injuries. I'm talking about capability. This is the team in the NFL that is most dependent on the capability of one player. That's J.J. McCarthy. And also, let me just say this as a Viking fan, I need J.J. McCarthy this year to be average. Just be average. If you give me a stat line of 200 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, that's a win. The Vikings are winning those kind of games this year. Their defense was great last year. Their defense got better this year, or should be better this year. Their offensive line, they had some injuries last year. Their left tackle was out for almost half the season. The interior wasn't great. Beefed up the offensive line. That should improve the running game. Again, J.J. McCarthy does not need to be Josh Allen. So when people are over here saying, I just don't know, I just don't see it with J.J. McCarthy. Yeah, if you're trying to see Josh Allen as J.J. McCarthy right now, yeah, then obviously you don't see it. But the Vikings do not need that. They won 14 games last year with good coaching, and they have the same coaches everywhere this year, and a great defense. And to be honest, Sam Darnold, if you really look at the number, they had a lot of splash plays, but Sam Darnold, I'm going to see what ranking he was. But I don't think he was top 5. So 2024 season, let's see. QB rankings. Total QBR leaders. Sam Darnold was 14th. 14th in QBR last year. He had a QBR of 57. So everyone that seems to think that Sam Darnold carried the Vikings to 14 wins last year, that's just wrong. It is just not true. Lamar was number 1, Josh Allen number 2, Joe Burrow number 3, Jaden Daniels number 4. Like, those top guys were legit. And I should give Jordan Love more credit. He was 5th. Jared Goff was 6th. But again, I just think that it wasn't Sam Darnold. Yes, was he great? Of course. But he wasn't, even in this quarterback statistical rankings from last year, Sam Darnold 16th behind Bo Nix, who was 15th. And the top 5 here are Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, Joe Burrow, and Baker Mayfield. Jaden Daniels 6th. So that's the thing. I don't see how the Vikings are going to go from 14 wins to 7 this year or be a terrible football team. Literally, unless J.J. McCarthy is the worst quarterback in the NFL. He just needs to be average. And even when the Vikings have had average quarterbacks, they've been okay. They've contended in games, competed. And this is a better version of that team because everything around J.J. McCarthy is better. Adam Thielen is there now. So, again, in my mind, I think the Vikings have a very good chance of winning this division. And I would put them 2nd behind Detroit. But like I mentioned earlier, I usually try to fight the bias that I have. So I will fight that bias, and I'm going to put them 3rd in the division. I'm going Detroit's going to be 1st. I'll give them a 12-5 record. And that's, I think they could be 13-4, but let's give them 12-5. A 3-win drop-off. Detroit, 12-5 this year. Green Bay, also 12-5 this year, but I think they maybe will lose the tiebreaker, with Detroit. And then I have Minnesota at 11-6 or 10-7. But let's go 11-6. I think they can be 11-6. Let's go. 10-7. I'll fight my bias. Minnesota will be 10-7 in third place, and we'll sneak into a wild card spot. And then I have Chicago there at 8-9. And if you have a problem with me predicting Chicago being 8-9, well, I'm giving them those 3 wins that we took away from Detroit because of Ben Johnson. Even though I don't know anything about Ben Johnson, the head coach. So really, I'm just gifting them wins from a coordinator. But I do think that they have a pretty good roster. I think Ben Johnson can do a decent job here in Chicago. So again, that's my prediction for the NFC North. Remember, don't forget, subscribe and please comment. I'd love to go back and forth with people and talk some sports. So Detroit, 12-5. Green Bay, 12-5. Minnesota, 10-7. Chicago, 8-9. Let me know what y'all think.